My name is Anders Damholt. I have a PhD in biochemistry and I'm the head of clinical development at Christian Hansen in Denmark.
My name is Brynjulf Mortensen. I have a PhD in human physiology and I am a senior scientist in clinical development at Christian Hansen.
As a result of an intense preclinical screening program, including state-of-the-art in vitro and in vivo models, our research team has identified a new bacteria strain, BIF195, as a promising new candidate for alleviation of side effects caused by acetylsalicylic acid. Acetylsalicylic acid, commonly known as aspirin, is a medication used to alleviate pain, fever and inflammation. Aspirin is consumed globally by several million people. In the US, 30% of the population aged 40 and above are estimated to be everyday users of low dose of aspirin to reduce the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Aspirin works through the inhibition of the COX enzymes, which convert arachidonic acid into thromboxanes and prostaglandins, both risk components of cardiovascular diseases. However, the daily use of aspirin places these healthy adults in an increased risk of ulcers in the small intestine, as up to 50% of the aspirin users actually have gastrointestinal mucosal damage. Side effects of aspirin include reduced intestinal mucin, surface phospholipids, mucosal proliferation, and an increased local inflammatory response, all leading to epithelial damage, intestinal permeability, ulceration and bleeding. We have performed a series of clinical trials to establish the safety and efficacy of an exciting and novel strain, and we here demonstrate that BIF195 helps protect against small intestinal damage caused by acetylsalicylic acid in healthy volunteers.
In gastroenterology, we recently reported the main outcome of a placebo-controlled, double-blinded clinical trial that included 75 healthy volunteers given 300 milligrams of aspirin daily for 6 weeks. In addition to aspirin, participants were randomly assigned to oral capsules containing 50 billion colony-forming units of BIF195 or placebo daily for 8 weeks. The clinical trial was in compliance with good clinical practice. Here we see an example of video capsule endoscopy. The left sequence shows the small intestine of a subject who has consumed aspirin together with BIF195, and the right sequence shows a subject who has consumed aspirin together with placebo. BIF195 were generally well tolerated by the subjects. None of the 32 adverse events registered during the trial were related to BIF195 intake as assessed by the investigators. These serial video capsule endoscopies obtained from each subject enabled us to calculate the area under the curve for the Lewis score, which was the primary endpoint, and the area under the curve for ulcer numbers being the first ranked secondary endpoint of the trial. The trial met its primary endpoint with a statistically significant 30% lower area under the curve Lewis score in the BIF195 arm versus the placebo arm. The trial also met its secondary endpoint with a statistically significant 33% lower area under the curve for ulcer numbers in the BIF195 subjects versus the placebo group.
During the study, we acquired blood samples from the study subject, and by a post hoc analysis we measured blood, prostaglandin and thromboxane. We did not identify any differences between the active and the placebo arm, and this indicates that during the trial aspirin maintained the intended effect and that BIF195 does not counteract the systemic effect of aspirin. Based on these data, we conclude that BIF195 confers clinically significant reduced risk of small intestinal ulcers caused by acetylsalicylic acid in humans. The conclusion is supported both by the primary and the first of the secondary endpoint of this trial. Daily BIF195 intake is well tolerated and is not associated with any adverse events. BIF195 does not modulate cardiovascular disease protective systemic effect of acetylsalicylic acid, and thus there's no change to the cardiovascular risk profile. These findings will be confirmed with an additional trial in US population in 2019 to 20.
And together with further research, we aim to get a better understanding of the mode of action of BIF195.